The house was too quiet that night. The kind of silence that didn't comfort, it echoed. Olivia stood by the kitchen window, her fingertips resting lightly on the edge of the sink. Watching soft rain tap against the glass, her husband, Mark, had flown to Chicago that morning for yet another work conference. It was his fourth in just 2 months. Once upon a time, he would call every night, send little updates, ask how her day was. But now his texts were dry, short, and always delayed. Landed safe or busy, talk later. It felt like they were more business partners than husband and wife. Olivia didn't cry anymore. Not for Mark. Not for their fated love. She just stood in the silence and felt the weight of her own emptiness. Jake had moved back in 2 weeks earlier. Mark's 22-year-old son from his first marriage. He'd just graduated college and said he needed time to figure things out before finding a place of his own. Olivia had known him since he was a teenager. Awkward, quiet, always respectful. But something had changed. He'd grown up. He was taller, broader, his jaw more defined, and he carried himself with a quiet confidence. And when he looked at her now, it wasn't like a stepson looking at a mother figure. There was something deeper in his eyes, something curious, warm. She tried to ignore it. After all, she was his stepmother, married to his father. But God, it had been so long since someone looked at her like she mattered that night. Around 10 p.m., Olivia thought she was alone. She walked softly into the kitchen, her silk robe brushing against her bare legs. The soft hum of the fridge was the only sound until she heard a step behind her. She turned quickly. Jake stood in the hallway, shirtless, his skin still damp from a run in the rain. His dark hair was messy, beads of water running down his chest. He froze for a second, then smiled. "Didn't mean to scare you." Olivia swallowed. "It's fine. Didn't think anyone else was awake." Jake stepped into the light, grabbed a glass from the cabinet, and filled it with water. "Couldn't sleep. It's weird being back. Here feels different now." She nodded, arms wrapped around herself, though she wasn't cold. "Yeah, a lot's changed." He took a sip and leaned against the counter. "Are you okay, Olivia?" The way he said her name, it wasn't casual. It was intimate, careful. Her heart thudded in her chest. "I'm just ... tired, I guess." Looked at her for a long moment, his eyes scanning her face. "You seem sad, I've noticed." She tried to laugh it off, but her voice cracked. "Marriage isn't always what it looks like from the outside." Jake set down his glass. "He's never here." It wasn't a question. It was a fact. And it hit hard. She nodded slowly, biting her bottom lip. "You shouldn't have to feel invisible," he said, stepping a little closer. "You deserve more than that." The space between them felt charged. Olivia's mind screamed that this was wrong. He was her stepson. This couldn't happen. But her heart, her body leaned toward the warmth of his voice, the truth in his words. She hadn't been touched, really touched, in months. Hadn't been looked at like a woman, not a wife or a housekeeper or someone just filling a role. "Should go to bed," she whispered, stepping back, needing to break whatever spell was building in the room. Jake didn't stop her, but he didn't move either. "Good night, Liv." She froze at the nickname. No one had ever called her that. Not even Mark. Her breath caught. She turned slowly, her eyes locking with his for a second too long. The air was thick between them, unspoken, dangerous, and yet electrifying. She walked away, her heart racing, her skin hot, and something stirring inside her she hadn't felt in years. And just like that, everything changed. Olivia tried to ignore the change, but it was impossible. Something unspoken had passed between her and Jake that night in the kitchen, something that couldn't be undone. Every time she walked into a room, she felt him, his eyes on her. Not in a disrespectful way, but in a way that made her feel something she hadn't in years wanted. She started noticing little things. How he offered to help her with dinner, even when she didn't ask. How he'd clean up without a word, or how he'd linger in the living room a little longer if she was there. Talking with her about books or music or memories from before Mark grew cold. Jake made her laugh again. And the way he listened to her, not just hearing her, but really seeing her, was something Mark hadn't done in years. Olivia told herself she was overthinking it, that she was just lonely, but deep down she knew the truth. She missed being seen, touched, and cared for. Jake didn't just fill a silence in the house. He filled the emptiness in her heart. It all came crashing in one quiet Saturday night. Mark was out of town again, attending a real estate retreat in Denver, though Olivia had stopped keeping track of where he went. She came downstairs to grab her phone charger, not expecting anyone to be awake. She was wearing a long robe, nothing fancy, but the soft fabric clung to her skin just enough. Jake was in the living room, lying across the couch, watching a movie. He muted the TV when he saw her. "Didn't mean to wake you," he said, sitting up slowly. She shook her head. "I couldn't sleep," she replied. Voice sounded too soft, too exposed. She clutched the robe tighter, but it didn't change the way he looked at her. His eyes didn't wander, not in a boyish, careless way, but in a quiet, reverent way that made her skin flush. She should have turned and gone back upstairs. But instead, she sat down on the edge of the couch a few feet away. There was silence between them, but it wasn't awkward. It was heavy with things they didn't dare say out loud. Finally, Jake turned to her. "You ever think about how life ends up nothing like you planned?" he asked. She gave a sad smile. "All the time." Jake's voice dropped. "You deserve more than this. This life of waiting around for someone who stopped choosing you a long time ago." Her throat tightened. "Don't," she whispered. "You're his son." Jake shook his head. "No, I'm just a man who sees a woman being treated like she. Doesn't matter. And that woman is the most beautiful person I've ever known. It happens so fast, yet so slowly." Jake leaned closer. Olivia's heart thundered. She should have pushed him away, said something, broken the spell, but she didn't. When his lips touched hers, it wasn't wild or rushed. It was soft, gentle, like a question that had finally been answered. Her body responded before her mind could stop it. The kiss deepened, her hands rising to his chest, feeling the heat of him. The way he trembled ever so slightly, like he'd wanted this just as long as she had. But then guilt slammed into her like cold water. She pulled away, breathless, eyes wide. "This can't happen," she said, standing quickly. "This was a mistake." Jake stood to heart in his eyes. "You didn't stop me," he said quietly. She turned away, ashamed, afraid of what she might say if she looked at him again. "I have to go." As she climbed the stairs to her room, her hands shaking, her heart still beating wildly in her chest, she knew one thing for certain: this wasn't over. Something had been set in motion, and no matter how wrong it felt, part of her couldn't wait to feel his kiss again. And that terrified her more than anything. Olivia avoided Jake 4 days after the kiss, trying to keep herself busy, organizing the garage, going on long walks, cooking meals she didn't eat. But no matter what she did, her mind kept going back to that night. The way Jake had looked at her, the way his hands felt, the quiet passion in his kiss. It wasn't just lust, it felt real, something deeper. And that made it even more dangerous. She didn't want to admit how much she wanted him, how much she longed for someone to make her feel again. But she also knew what was at stake. She was still married to Mark, and no matter how distant he'd become, no matter how cold their marriage felt, Olivia had made a vow. So she did the only thing she could think of. She booked a weekend getaway with Mark to try and reconnect, to see if maybe, somehow, there was something still worth saving. They drove up to a quiet lakeside resort in Michigan. The weather was perfect, the room cozy, the view beautiful. But everything between them felt forced. Mark barely looked up from his phone. He didn't ask how she was. He didn't touch her once. One night, while he was in the shower, she couldn't take it anymore. Something inside her snapped. Olivia reached for his phone, her hands shaking. She knew it was wrong, but something told her deep down she needed to know. And there it was. Message after message. A woman named Rebecca. Dozens of texts. Miss you already. Last night was perfect. When can I see you again? Her stomach dropped. The truth hit her like a storm. While she had been drowning in guilt over one kiss, Mark had been having a full-blown affair. For who knows how long. Olivia didn't say anything that night. She couldn't. Her heart was in pieces. She waited until they got home, then sat in her room alone, staring out the window, trying to breathe. That evening, Jake knocked gently on her door. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice calm. She hesitated, then nodded. He stepped in, careful, like he didn't want to scare her. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said softly. "I know what we did was complicated, but I don't regret it." Olivia turned to him slowly. Her eyes were tired, but her voice was clear. "Mark is cheating on me. I saw the messages." Jake's expression changed instantly. Anger, pain, and something else, fierce protectiveness. "I knew something was off," he said. "He's never around. And when he is, he treats you like a stranger." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "I've spent years trying to be the perfect wife. I gave up so much for him. And all this time, he's been with someone else." Jake stepped closer. "You didn't deserve that. None of this is your fault." She looked up at him, and for the first time she didn't feel shame around him. She felt safe. "What am I supposed to do now?" she whispered. He reached for her hands, holding them gently. "You start over. Not for me. Not for him. For you. But if you let me, I want to be a part of that. I want to be there for you, not just in the shadows, not just secretly. I care about you, Olivia. I love you." The words hit her heart like lightning and warmth all at once. She should have pushed him away again. She should have told him this was wrong. But the truth was, it didn't feel wrong anymore. It felt like the first honest thing she'd experienced in years. She leaned in slowly, letting her forehead rest against his. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Me too," Jake said softly. "But I'd rather be scared with you than live a lie alone." And when they kissed again, it wasn't stolen, it was chosen, real, and this time Olivia didn't stop it. She let herself feel, let herself fall. For the first time in a long, long time, she finally felt alive. The days that followed were a strange mix of guilt, relief, and passion. Olivia knew her life would never be the same. She and Jake tried to keep things quiet, but in the stillness of the house, behind closed doors, they allowed themselves moments of truth's gentle touches in the hallway, whispered words late at night, soft kisses shared under the dim glow of the kitchen light. It wasn't just about lust anymore. It felt like something real, two broken hearts finding a strange, unexpected peace in each other. Olivia had spent so many years playing the role of the patient wife. The one who smiled through loneliness, the one who made excuses for a man who had stopped seeing her long ago. But now, she wasn't hiding anymore. She was waking up. And Jake, he wasn't a boy. He was a man who chose her, not because of obligation or convenience, but because he genuinely cared. Still, reality was never far behind. She hadn't told Mark yet. The weight of that conversation sat on her chest like a stone every morning. But the decision became clear one evening when she came home and found Mark already there, relieved from his trip. Sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone with a drink in his hand. He barely looked up when she walked in. "Didn't expect you back tonight," she said, keeping her voice calm. "Plans changed," he replied flatly. The silence that followed was heavy. She wanted to scream, cry, throw his phone across the room and demand the truth. But she didn't. Instead, she sat down across from him and spoke the words she had been holding in for far too long. "I know about Rebecca." He blinked, finally. Meeting her eyes, "I saw your texts. I know everything." For the first time in years, Mark looked nervous. But he didn't deny it. He just sighed and said, "It's not what you think." She smiled sadly. "It never is." Then she stood up, her voice steady, her heart racing. "I'm leaving, Mark. This marriage has been over for a long time. We both know that." He didn't argue. Maybe he expected it. Maybe part of him even wanted it. Olivia didn't wait. For him to say more, she packed a small bag that night and drove to a hotel. The next morning, she called a lawyer. And that same afternoon, she texted Jake and told him the truth. He showed up an hour later, standing at her door with eyes full of worry and hope. "You told him?" he asked. She nodded, and without a word, he pulled her into his arms. Didn't need to talk much. Just being there together was enough. Over the next few weeks, Olivia started to rebuild her life, this time on her own terms. She found a small apartment near the lake, started painting again, something she had given up after marrying Mark. Jake helped her move, helped fix the leaky faucet, hung her favorite pictures. Cooked dinner when she was too tired to stand. They never rushed into anything. They took their time. They talked about everything: his childhood, her past, their fears, their dreams. And yes, it was complicated. People whispered. Some friends pulled away. But the ones who really mattered saw the truth. Olivia was finally happy. Really, honestly happy. 6 months later, on a cool fall evening, they went for a walk by the lake. The air was crisp, the trees painted in oranges and reds, the sky soft and golden. They sat on a bench, holding hands, wrapped in a shared blanket. Jake looked at her and smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "If I had met you under different circumstances, I still would have fallen in love with you," he said. Olivia's eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but from knowing she had chosen herself, chosen love, chosen truth. "I believe you," she whispered. And as they kissed beneath the fading light, Olivia knew the past would always be a part of her story, but it no longer owned her. She had let go of what hurt and opened her heart to something new. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And sometimes that's more than enough.